Story 1. I worked as a child protection specialist for years. I was assigned to work with a mother. It was the third time the courts had been involved with her because of drug abuse. Her drug of choice was huffing. It was the only huffing case I ever handled. She was a lovely, kind, and determined woman who had worked hard to earn a degree and start a career. Despite her efforts, she relapsed. This was her last chance with the courts, so the stakes were high. We worked well together. She spent 18 months in treatment, became reemployed, found her own place, and increased visits with her wonderful children. We went to court, requested reunification, and the judge granted it. We were all proud and happy for them as a family. We planned to move her children home with her a week after that court date. 2 days before the planned return, she drove her car through the front of a Walmart while high from huffing. She killed a Walmart employee and then died from inhalant use in the electronics aisle, using keyboard duster spray, while law enforcement was en route. I received the news at 5 in the morning that she had died and had to tell her children they would never be returning to their mother. Story 2. A friend of a friend was caught in a to catch a predator-style sting. He had been messaging someone he believed was a 14-year-old and attempted to meet for sex. He lost his wife, all his friends, his apprenticeship, and spent several years in prison. Story 3. I worked on a school bus as a monitor and aide. There was one driver, Ed, who was always complaining. Every day there was some new issue. He was difficult to work with. He got into an argument with one of our supervisors over the radio and received a 3-day suspension. On his first morning back, during his first route, he started complaining on the radio. Dispatch asked a few simple questions. He responded with hostility and unprofessional comments. The director of transportation joined the radio and asked Ed to meet him in his office after the morning routes. Ed replied that he would come only if he had time. The director insisted that it was not optional, and Ed repeated that he would come only if he had time. This occurred over the radio while we were picking up high school students, so everyone could hear. Another dispatcher told Ed to park his bus at the school after finishing the high school route because someone would take over his route and bring him back to the lot. Ed refused and said he would finish his route himself, and that if someone else was to drive it, they should get the director's supervisor to do so. When dispatch asked for an estimated time of arrival to the high school, he replied that it would be whenever the director's supervisor arrived and that he would arrive when he arrived. He also claimed they were targeting and picking on him and said that it would end that day. At that point, he still had a bus full of high school students. I did not see what happened at the high school, but other drivers said the police were waiting for him when he arrived and removed him from his bus. One driver said he behaved badly the entire time. I do not know the exact charges. Possibly kidnapping for refusing to bring the students to school, or theft for not returning the bus. He was arrested and fired. A few days later, we learned he had a heart attack and died, most likely from stress. Story 4. A man at work was caught red-handed stealing AirPods from the locker room. When he was sent to collect his kit before being sent home, he excused himself to use the toilet and defecated on the floor. We work on an oil rig where theft cannot be concealed. He was a senior technician earning a good salary and did not need the AirPods. He stole them for fun. He is now no longer required to return to work, and all the companies talk to each other. He destroyed his career over a pair of AirPods. Story 5. He was my parents' former pastor and our family friend. He had many friends, a successful music career, a music venue, a doting wife, and 5 children. Then he decided to cheat on his wife. Afterward, he became extremely paranoid and began tracking his wife and children so he would know where they were and would not get caught. He installed hidden cameras throughout the house because he convinced himself his wife was probably cheating too, though she was not. He also told her to stay home and said cruel lies that no one liked her and that no one wanted her to come. My parents caught him with another woman at a concert he did not expect them to attend. They told his wife. When she called him, he lied and then let slip that he knew where she was. That led her to discover the hidden cameras and an AirTag on her car. Now none of his children speak to him. He lost the house, his friends, his musician colleagues, and everything he had. The other woman left him when he had nothing to give. He is not apologetic and still tries to convince people he was in the right. He now lives in a trailer by the beach, trying to relive his youth at 65. Story 6. This guy I went to college with was in the Army Reserves making excellent grades, and his parents were very well off. His life was set. He received a monthly allowance from his parents, had a brand new car for school, lived in an apartment right off campus, and had little financial responsibility. He did not have to work, only monthly reserve duty, about 3 days a month. To shorten the story, he failed a random urinalysis drug test for cocaine. He got lucky and the Army gave him a second chance. Not even 5 months later, he failed another drug test for cocaine and marijuana. He somehow got lucky again and they discharged him with an other than honorable discharge. His parents pulled his funding, and he had to take a minimum wage job at a sandwich shop. I never saw him again until he appeared on my Facebook about a year later. I messaged him to ask how he was. He had moved halfway across the United States with a woman he had gotten pregnant, and they were both working at Walmart and barely affording rent. He sold his Bayerisch Motor and Werke car to pay for the move. He also looked rough in many of his pictures. Story 7. I have a friend I will call Jay. He is smart as heck but a little on the spectrum, so he is socially clueless. He made good money in tech. One day he was at a friend's house and the friend said, "Nobody could bug my house without me knowing." Jay thought it would be funny to place a spare webcam he had in his backpack into the friend's entertainment center and plug it into his game console to see how long it would take to be noticed. The friend did not notice, but the friend's girlfriend did. She thought they were being recorded having sex and called the police. The police arrested the friend. When Jay heard about it, he went to explain. He did not think he needed a lawyer. He figured the police would see it was a misunderstanding. In my state, placing a recording device in someone's home without consent is voyeurism, which is a sex crime. Jay admitted this on the record to the police. Also in my state, all sex crimes must be prosecuted by law. So even though Jay's friend and his friend's girlfriend did not want to press charges, Jay was still prosecuted. The prosecutor and judge were as gentle as they could be, but he was convicted. Now, as a registered sex offender for life, he has trouble finding and keeping work, gets harassed by neighbors, and cannot attend most of his kids' sports events. All over one seemingly harmless prank. Story 8. A recent example. A doctor can no longer work because he assaulted his wife during their divorce. I do not know the specifics, but the domestic violence conviction on his record prevents him from practicing medicine. Story 9. A former coworker applied for the same internal job opening as I did. I got the position. She immediately messaged all our coworkers saying she would punch me if she saw me in the parking lot while we were at work. Someone reported the messages, and I found out when she was fired on the spot. For weeks, she repeatedly called my personal phone, insisting I owed her money because she lost her job. As a result, she ruined her reputation, and her credentials were reported to the board by my employer. All she had to do was step back and ask the employer why she did not get the position instead of reacting emotionally and jeopardizing her job. Story 10. My uncle was an ambidextrous baseball pitcher in high school. He was absurdly good at it. He could have received an athletic scholarship, gone to college, and maybe gone pro. After his father died, he began using drugs and is now a heroin addict, in and out of prison. Story 11. My dad was a talented mechanic and the shop foreman. He was well liked, made good money, loved his job, and owned a nice house in a beautiful neighborhood in a port town we all loved. He was married to a wonderful woman, my mom, and they had 2 children. He could not stop drinking. He became abusive and horrible and lost everything. His house, his job, his family. He drank himself to death when I was 19 and my sister was 17. He died alone. To her enormous credit, after she left, my mom put herself through school and supported us on her own. She was blacklisted by both families because the divorce was looked down upon and they felt she should not shame the family. They even threatened to lie in court and say she was on drugs. She was not. Leaving was the bravest and best thing she could have done for us. At the funeral, those same people called her brave and said they did not know how bad he had been until years later. My sister and I are both successful, thriving adults with good careers. We have our own families and children, own our homes, and have good incomes. We are well educated, and our lives are filled with love. It is all thanks to my mom. Over the years, I think about my dad from time to time. Having my own children now and a husband, all of whom I love dearly, I cannot imagine putting them through what we went through. I do not feel sad about it anymore, but it is such a waste. His whole life wasted for what? Some liquid in a bottle? Addiction is a terrible thing. My mom is a rock star. It is nice to know the internet thinks so too. The three of us have no contact with either side of the family anymore and have not for a long time. We love our little trio, which has grown to include in-laws, grandchildren, and many friends. Your family is who you make it. Do not waste time on people who do not love you. Story 12. My best friend and heterosexual life mate was in his early 30s, married with children, had a great job and many friends. He was always looking for inventive ways to party. He discovered you could order dried poppy pods online, grind them up, and make poppy tea. This stuff is very strong. 4 to 6 ounces will have you floating on a cloud for 24 hours. Over the next 10 years, his doses kept increasing until he could no longer physically drink enough fluid to maintain his habit. He lost his wife, his children, and then his job at the third-generation family business. Then he switched to heroin. He was living in a $500,000 home with no power or water, and other people using drugs were there. When he overdosed, they put his body in a closet for 3 days so they could run up his credit and debit cards before reporting his death to the police. Now his family is fighting squatters who have destroyed his home. I miss him every day. Story 13. My younger brother broke up with a girl he liked because she farted in her sleep. He told my older brother and me that he was in the midst of a miserable dry spell and had been seeing a girl he liked, but then she farted in her sleep and he was so grossed out because there are some things you don't need to see your significant other doing. It just felt like the mystery was gone. My older brother said, "Yeah, because that's what the mystery was about. Farting." I called my younger brother a fucking moron, and my older brother said, "You're half right." Edit. When he said, "You're half right," he meant my younger brother may be a moron, but he wasn't having sex. Story 14. My buddy Steve seemed to have it all. A good career, an amazing wife, and a charming house. Then the model trains took over. Not small setups, he filled the basement and then the garage. His wife went from amused to livid. Arguments turned into screaming matches. She eventually left, and Steve, lost in his model train bliss, barely noticed. He later inherited a fortune and spent it all on antique train sets. Eventually, he realized nothing could cure the sadness of losing his wife. Story 15. My father started using crack in his 40s. He had a nice, high-paying job doing what he loved, playing golf, and he even played with celebrities and presidents in the 1990s. We do not know for sure how he started. His current story is that he was out drinking when someone offered him a smoke. It was crack, and he became addicted from that point. Within a few years of active addiction, he lost his job, his family, and everything. I suppose he just woke up one day and decided to be a giant piece of shit. He is 69 years old now and is incarcerated somewhere. Story 16. One of my former friends from college worked as an analyst for a large investment bank. He did not handle the coronavirus pandemic, COVID-19, and isolation well. He became involved in conspiracy theories and turned openly racist. When he returned to the office, he refused to work with people with dark skin, Muslims, or women he considered intellectually inferior. This did not go over well with his boss, a second-generation Somali immigrant who is a Muslim woman. He was fired and has not found another job at the same level. Story 17. My childhood best friend had created a good life and was well on her way to a stable, successful future when she met a man on a dating site and decided he was the one. He turned out to be an abusive addict, but she was getting older and afraid he was her last chance at love. So she stayed and tried to make it work despite everyone who cared for her trying to show her she was making a mistake. She lost her job, her house, her car, her hobbies, many friends and family members, her dog, her health, and all her money. They became homeless, with him disabled and in poor health. They lived in a car for a while, she panhandled for money, and they drank heavily, used drugs, and committed theft and fraud. He died while they were on the run from a serious crime, leaving her with a criminal record and severely damaged mental and physical health. She is currently in recovery in a safe place, but she will never regain the life she had before she met him. Story 18. Someone I know, a 32-year-old man, began a relationship with a 21-year-old woman. After his heart was broken, he became intoxicated, drove his car at 200 kilometers per hour, and crashed. Story 19. My mother had a great husband and children to be proud of. Her mental health got the best of her, and instead of recognizing it and taking accountability to get help, she took it out on us mentally, verbally, and a few times physically. My father tried to talk her into therapy or couples counseling. I once asked her if she was happy. She replied, "I'm not the one who has changed, you all have." That was all the answer I needed. We could not take it anymore, and divorce was the only way out. She reacted spitefully, even though divorce was also what she wanted. A list of things she did. She tried to tell the neighbors my father was dangerous and asked if she could store belongings at their houses. They turned her down. She tried to tell my grandmother, her mother, that my father was dangerous. My grandmother knew it was lies and called her out. My mother never spoke to her again and was cruel last year when my grandmother was dying. I was in college and my younger sister was in high school. She would text me when she was scared, saying our mother pulled a knife on our father, among other frightening events. She tried to ground me at age 20 when I was home from college for the summer. She was angry for reasons I do not know and chased me out of the house as I was leaving for work. She tried to stop me from going, but I got in the car and left. Before divorce papers were served, my mother called the police on my father. She claimed she had a restraining order and wanted him removed. My father ended up staying in a hotel over my spring break. I visited him. He was not okay. He lost a lot of weight going through that heartache. That was the straw that broke the camel's back, and he filed for divorce. During divorce court, she tried to convince the judge my father was dangerous but ranted about dust collecting on items in her closet. The judge dismissed any claim that my father was dangerous. Rightfully so. My father was our hero. I had only ever feared my mother. The first time she called me after moving out was to scream about a check I wrote her for the car for $300 that had bounced. Technically, I did not owe her anything. The car was gifted to me in their divorce. I explained that she had taken about 4 months to deposit it, and by then my fall semester tuition was due. I paid for my own college and was out of money. She would not drop it, so she called my father crying. He transferred $300 into my account and told me to call her back and ask her to try depositing it again in a couple of days to stop the harassment. I went to therapy and came to the conclusion that she was not always like this. As a kid, she had been an amazing mother. Riding our bikes to the library, camping trips, arts and crafts, very involved. I think as we grew older and became more independent, her role as a stay-at-home mother was ending and she did not know what to do. She had probably buried trauma from her abusive father, and it surfaced. She took it out on us. Her actions cost her everything. There is no relationship with her daughters, and if I have children, she will not be allowed to meet them. I cannot trust that she will respect my boundaries if we reconnect. Story 20. A friend of mine was a criminal defense attorney. He had his own practice, lived in a beautiful house on the water, and had been married to a wonderful wife for over 20 years. He had a drinking problem before meeting his wife, but he became sober and was living life to the fullest. Unbeknownst to anyone, he had secretly started drinking again, at first only at night. That habit slowly fell by the wayside and began to occur earlier and earlier in the day. He started missing work, and problems developed between him and his wife. His wife eventually gave him an ultimatum, and he chose the bottle. He lost his wife, then his practice, then his house. He became so intoxicated that he fell, hit his head, and suffered a brain hemorrhage. They estimated he had been dead on the floor for 3 to 4 days before someone found him. I think of him often and feel very sad. He had had it all, and in the end he died alone on the floor. Story 21. There are many examples of commercial pilots who ruined their careers with relatively minor arrests. A single poor decision one night can lead to an arrest, and a pilot's license to earn a living can be permanently revoked. It is harsh for someone to lose everything for recording a blood alcohol concentration of 0.08% during a field sobriety test, but I understand the Federal Aviation Administration enforcing strict rules to protect passenger safety. Story 22. My husband imploded his life and lost our beautiful home and family compound. We lived next door to family. He lost it to a midlife crisis affair partner, and it blew up in his face a year later. He is now in a studio apartment alone and is begging to come home. Nope. Story 23. Someone I know married the daughter of a super wealthy man with 9-figure wealth. She was an amazing person and did not act like the daughter of a rich man. He cheated on her with a stripper. She divorced him, and he is now dating the stripper, who behaves abusively. Story 24. My brother got into 2 car accidents and suffered serious injuries but recovered after months of healing and rehabilitation. His fiancée was hurt worse and had metal pins in her arm and hip. The settlements were just over $2.5 million. He decided that because he had money, everyone would want something from him, so he told the family he was cutting off contact because he did not want to deal with it. Nobody asked him for anything. In fact, our father told him to be careful and invest conservatively because he and his fiancée might need money for health issues that could arise as they aged. They took it as an insult. They moved away, changed their phones, and we had no contact for several years. My sister did some investigating because our father was terminally ill and she wanted to get in touch with him. She found him in Chicago. He was destitute, living in a rundown apartment, an alcoholic with chronic liver and kidney problems, and his fiancée was no longer in the picture. He was almost unrecognizable. Bitter and angry that no one came to help him, he told my sister to leave and not contact him again. He died a few years ago at a homeless shelter, and we had to identify his body at the coroner's office. Story 25. My best friend's ex-wife was a counselor who cheated on him with one of her patients 3 times. He was a loving husband who doted on her and gave her everything. They wanted to start a family, and his family accepted her. My friend finally saw the light and divorced her. He is now remarried to a wonderful woman who appreciates him as much as he appreciates her, and they have just had their first child. I do not know what his ex-wife is doing now, but I hope she realizes someday what she threw away. Story 26. I watched my friend smoke his boogers because his nose was too blocked to snort any more cocaine. Story 27. My ex-sister-in-law has struggled with alcoholism for years. She was attractive, fiercely intelligent, and a really fun person, but she had mental health issues that were ignored for a long time. Eventually, she got that under control and became a mental health professional. I think she is probably very good at it, but she is on a downward spiral. Her drinking is worse than ever. She has had 2 driving while intoxicated incidents. I no longer let my children go anywhere with her because she drives while intoxicated with them or tries to get them to drive so she can drink. Once she was pulled over and handed her marijuana and vaping pen to my child, saying she could not be caught with them. She cancels her appointments with clients constantly. One client believes she was drunk during their sessions. Another friend whose mother works with her is scared for her mother's safety because my ex-sister-in-law has a history of violence and assault and once tried to give that mother benzodiazepines she had. She is single as far as I know, and her partners have been either unsuitable or abusive. I have cut her off entirely, but I feel terrible for her. Story 28. This is relatively mild, but it is still sad. My mother is socially isolated. She lives near me, and for years her main source of interaction was me and my children. She was emotionally abusive when I was a child. She improved for a few years, but then the abuse escalated again. I went no contact for several months, then had a sit down with her and discussed which abusive behaviors needed to stop for us to continue our relationship. She agreed. The improvement lasted 2 years. Then the abuse escalated again, and she put my children and my immunocompromised niece at risk during the pandemic. My husband and I told her she needed to change her behavior and acknowledge that it was not acceptable. She used her usual manipulation tactics, including a fake medical emergency that my husband took her to the hospital for. When we did not immediately forgive and forget, she called the police for a welfare check on my children. We have not spoken to her in nearly 3 years, and those have been the happiest years of my life. She now has no one locally. My brother had already distanced himself. He lives several hours away. She does not even get attention when she goes to the hospital, because my sister-in-law is now helping manage everything and will only talk to the doctors about her health issues, not my mother. I hope being abusive and selfish was worth her loneliness. Story 29. I worked in information technology. We hired a young man just out of high school who was very sharp. Our company placed him in an internship, paid for his bachelor's degree in information technology, gave him a flexible part-time schedule, and guaranteed him a position with strong promotion potential upon graduation. He ended up not attending classes even though we were paying his tuition. Apparently, there was no formal accountability and it relied on an honor system. After a few years, he was found out and fired. I liked him and felt sad about the situation. He recently friended me on Facebook. He is not doing horribly, but he is not doing well either. Story 30. When I was younger, I spent my entire teenage years alone because I gave up easily and was scared of everything. I did not have friends, love, or even dances. I felt lifeless inside. Story 31. One of my former coworkers was a smart young man whom everyone liked. It was just a gas station cashier job, not hard at all. Ben was only 22, and we were not sure whether the attitude problem started before or after the drug use, but he began calling in sick frequently. Since he could not handle the responsibilities of his job, they had to let him go. His drug problem became apparent. He was seen around the neighborhood looking disheveled and lost. His best friend told us that he had been found unresponsive after an overdose and was in the intensive care unit. The doctor said the brain damage was irreversible and advised friends and family to come and say their goodbyes while he was still alive. Story 32. My father was married to my mother, and they had 3 children. He was a wonderful father until about 6 years ago. He changed jobs, began earning much more, and fell in with a bad crowd. He started going to strip clubs, hired prostitutes, and began an affair with someone in the same profession. We found out. He had a chance to redeem himself. My mother wanted to forgive him, but he lied and continued the affair and saw other women during that time. Before that, he was on track financially, had great friends in the neighborhood, and had fulfilling hobbies. Now he is losing money because of divorce agreements and support payments for my mother and youngest sibling, while also finding money to take his new girlfriend out and to support her family. All of his friends were disgusted by his decisions and no longer speak to him. His side of the family loathes him. He has nobody except the woman he left us for. He lost a wonderful, beautiful, charismatic woman, my mother, 3 amazing children who are all doing incredible things with their lives, multiple lifelong friends, and his own uncles, aunts, and grandmother. I sometimes feel sorry for him and all he has lost, but it was his decision. Story 33. My brother. He never took responsibility for anything he did. Everything was other people's fault, while at the same time he firmly believed he was meant for more, the smartest guy of all time, and he counted even the luckiest coincidence as a win because of his amazing skills. At first he did well. A good job, a pretty wife, 2 kids, and everything was fine. But he attributed far too much of his good fortune to superior intelligence and ability. While he was successful, he had a pretty normal career. It was not extraordinary. He had a normal apprenticeship, a normal job with a slightly above median wage, and a good bit of luck. A large part of his money and good fortune came from the fact that his wife was a banker. Still, he firmly believed he could do much better and was meant to be rich. He started investing and developed a system he firmly believed in. He believed that if his stocks lost value, his broker had betrayed him or it was totally unforeseeable, even when the broker had warned him, because his system was so brilliant. When he got lucky, he complained that he had not invested enough and claimed that his broker had warned him and his wife had not let him invest more, especially not her money. He did not see that he lost far more often than he won. He was too nervous, selling too often when he lost money and clinging too long to other stocks that were rising. He would not believe that a normal person is very unlikely to become rich with a 10,000 investment. It was much more likely he would lose all of it. His father-in-law offered to help him invest in housing and real estate, but that was too slow for his taste. The returns did not seem big enough. His sister-in-law did it and retired early last year with a comfortable income. She is not super rich, but secure enough to have a nice house and follow her passions instead of working. His behavior became riskier each year. He started direct investments, also known as giving money to his friends' supposed genius schemes that never turned out well. Then his marriage took a dive when his wife would not let him put a mortgage on their house to invest more. She cut him off and later she got cancer. My brother started drinking and ranted that she had destroyed his life and his chances of getting rich. He still showed not an iota of responsibility. He eventually had only the house left. When his wife died, he refused to decline the inheritance, which meant the house went into his insolvency fund. Had he declined the inheritance, it would have gone to his kids, since it was in his wife's name only and not part of their shared property. But he blames his kids for his own miserable life too, so he would not let them have it. The bank was willing not to sell the house right away and to work with him on a repayment plan, so he got a second chance. But he was furious. I still do not understand why he felt affronted by their sensible and generous offer. He destroyed the house. He scratched the seals from the window frames so rainwater flowed in. He did nothing to stop that. Instead, he filled the house with trash and let it rot. When his drinking problems worsened and he missed payments, the bank tried to sell the house, but the structure had deteriorated so much that it was worthless. It is a European house made of solid brickwork, but due to his neglect, it is more expensive to demolish the house than to let it sit rotting. The price for the land is lower than the cost of demolition. Now he has a huge, fully unpaid insolvency, no house, and he cannot get rid of the property because no one will buy it and the bank did not take it. When the insolvency phase is over, he will be stuck with the running costs of taxes and so on for a completely unusable estate. He now lives in a dingy one-room social housing unit, no family since his wife died. His kids do not talk to him anymore. And the last I heard is that his alcoholism cost him his well-paid job, so he lives off social aid now. The last time I saw him, about 2 years ago, he still blamed everyone else for sabotaging him and yapped about how he could get rich next week if someone believed in him and let him invest again without limits. Still completely delusional. I am waiting for the day my sister, who is still in contact with him, calls me to invite me to his funeral. I doubt he will ever accept his own part in his misery. I moved out young, and we never had much contact since he is 10 years older than I am. I only heard about all this from my mother, my sister, and his daughter, who is my godchild. The last call before I blocked all contact was him harassing me for money because, as he said, I owed him for whatever reason. I never fully understood his rambling logic since he only called me when he was completely drunk. But the gist was, since I am somehow not miserable, that is somehow his merit for being such a great brother. Despite us rarely having contact and him never once asking how I was or if I needed anything. He never helped me and I never took any of his shady financial advice, but somehow him giving me advice was already enough to make him part of my successes, so now I am at fault for not letting him invest my money. So yeah, a man who had all he could wish for but destroyed everything. Story 34. My ex-wife and I had realized that things weren't going to work out in the long run, but we wanted to end things as amicably as possible and take our time. There was no real animosity other than that things were not working, until, of course, I found out she had a boyfriend staying there when I was not home. If she had told me beforehand, I probably wouldn't have been that angry. She had just expedited the breakup so she could do what she wanted. But when I came home and literally found him, I was angry, and instead of being humble or trying to talk, she screamed that I could leave because she now had a new man who would take care of her. I said okay, grabbed my things, gave her the bill for the rent and said it was due in 3 days, but that her partner would, of course, take care of that. He was the one who had the problem because then she had to go all in. He stayed for a few months and then basically told her that it wasn't part of the plan to take on a wife with 2 children who were not mine on a random Tuesday. After that, she had to spend the next 10 years working various jobs, 15 hours a day, to be able to keep an apartment. We are friends today in that I do not hate her, so we talk once in a while, and she says that was the dumbest day of her life. Not even sitting down to discuss things for 5 minutes. Story 35. I had a very close friend whose wife, out of the blue, suddenly asked to open their marriage. He hated the idea but agreed anyway. The result was divorce, messy and angry, and damaging to their 3 children. The point of contention was that he ended up finding a very compatible outside partner, and his wife was shocked to discover he was swinging as happily as she was. She had expected he would never find a romantic partner, so she assumed she would have both a side partner and her husband to herself. She became jealous and angry and eventually demanded they close the marriage because she did not like him being with other people while she was seeing others. At that point, he finally saw things for what they were and they divorced. It wrecked his life for years. Moral of the story: open relationships are complicated and not something to rush into just because you are having a midlife crisis. Do not agree to open your marriage if you do not really want to. Story 36. My stepfather never listened to my mother or considered her feelings or perspective on family issues. Eventually, she got tired of trying and asked for a divorce. He would get very intoxicated and use marijuana. One day, he fell down some stairs and injured himself. He is now essentially a paraplegic. I had no great love for him and have not seen him since the accident. My mother went several times to help him. He did not apologize for his behavior and assumed she would spend her life taking care of him, ignoring the fact that they had been divorced for at least 5 years and that he had been in relationships with several other women. She no longer visits him. He was the kind of man who would say, "If you can beat me in a fight, then you are the man of the house and can make the rules." When I was still living at home in high school, I moved out at 21 to be free of his petty tyranny. When I heard what had happened, I burst out laughing. My first thought was to go to the hospital, kick down the door of his room, and yell, "All right, old man, it is go time." Story 37. A friend who married because he did not want to break it off thought he would be better off. He is now dying a slow death. Story 38. A friend got divorced because of money issues. In the settlement, she received approximately $500,000 after they split their assets. She moved into a house, promptly tore everything out to renovate, and quickly spent the money. A year later, she is back in debt and worrying about her bills. Story 39. I had a director who was arrested for fraud involving government assistance. She was earning a 6-figure salary and threw her career away for $250 in food stamps a month. Story 40. Myself in a roundabout way. About 6 years ago, I met an awesome woman who has been my girlfriend ever since. We share a lot of the same interests, enjoy the same entertainment, we support each other, and we are both very financially responsible. Everything was almost too perfect. We rented an apartment together for a few years, and a little over a year ago we decided to buy a house together. A first for both of us. Nothing fancy, but a nice place, and it was ours. She moved here from Venezuela, and when we met, her parents were still living there. If you do not already know, Venezuela is a terrible place to be right now. We understood that since her father had gone to school in the United States and had legal trouble for skipping a court date, he would not be able to visit the United States, much less move here. Her mother obviously would not leave him alone, so they would both remain in their home country. That was the idea we had in mind when we bought our relatively small house. That all changed with the United States initiative to allow Venezuelan immigrants to come over. Her father had my girlfriend hire a lawyer to address the legal issue, and now her parents are living with us. They have other family here in Florida, but those relatives have problems and cannot host them, so we are the ones stuck with them. They are older and needy. My girlfriend works a full-time job, and as soon as she gets off work, they are asking her to do this or that. He needs help with some app, she needs help sending money, and so on. He went out and got a car that my girlfriend co-signed for. With maybe $5,000 he had to cover costs while he looked for a job. His car payment is more than double mine. He then spent the next few months sitting around the house all day trying to start some event planning scheme. It was not until the money was gone that I had to sit down with my girlfriend and say, "You are not going to take over that car payment and car insurance for him. He either gets a job or we sell the car and cut our losses." Now he just drives for Uber Eats or similar services, just to cover the cost of the car. Her mother is nice enough. She cooks most days and keeps the kitchen clean. But it sucks. They are here all day, every day, always in the living room. Her mother is way too chatty and her father plays loud music from his phone because he says he does not like headphones, so I spend a good chunk of my time holed up in my room, barely getting to enjoy the house that I pay for every month. They are old and will have health problems, and they expect all kinds of support for that. I did not sign up for this. I thought maybe they had a plan to get their situation settled. But it really seems like the plan was just to move in here and leech. We had a good thing going, but now we do not have the energy or time to enjoy our relationship anymore. There is basically zero intimacy now, and I feel locked into this mortgage. I know it was not the intent, but I cannot shake the feeling that I was hoodwinked, scammed, and roped into a bad situation. Honestly, I just needed to vent. Story 41. My ex was an alcoholic but got sober for 3 years. He started drinking again, we broke up, and he began dating someone who encouraged his drinking. He broke up with her 6 months later, but within 2 years of relapsing, he had lost his friends, his hobbies, and his dream job. He quit his job and abandoned his apartment to move to another state with family members who used drugs and said they would help him. They had a lot of drama, and he ended up stuck at their house in the middle of nowhere with no job or car, taking care of many dogs all day until they all became homeless and were sleeping in tents in the mountains. He eventually got away, found a place and a job, but he has not stopped drinking and still cannot really get back on his feet. Addictions suck. Story 42. When I was in college, I worked as a student work-study employee at one of the dining halls. The college was in an economically depressed area and was the best place to work for many miles around. Competitive pay, paid time off, benefits, and so on. People who got jobs there generally held on to them. There was a woman who ran our short-order grill named Melanie. She was kind of gruff and kept to herself, but she was excellent at running the grill and a dependable, hard worker. She was also a single mother, so a regular paycheck was important to her. The student workers and full-time employees all shared a locker room. People started noticing things going missing, such as jewelry and small amounts of money. It was not anything egregious like a jacket, a pair of shoes, or a backpack, but many small items. For example, someone might find $10 missing from a wallet that had contained 50. The managers did not want a thief working at the dining hall because, although the amounts were small, they had no doubt it would continue to escalate. They contacted the police, who set up a sting and placed bills with ultraviolet ink in several wallets. After a few hours on a shift, they shone an ultraviolet light on everyone's hands. Only Melanie's hands showed the ink. They had other evidence they had slowly collected against her, but this was the damning proof. Melanie was fired immediately and faced criminal charges. I am not sure if she was ever convicted, but she was definitely blacklisted from ever working at the college again, and if she found employment elsewhere, it would be at a significant pay cut. I am still not sure what she was thinking. She was not stealing enough to make a meaningful difference in her life, but maybe she was building up to it. Who knows? It was a sad situation. Story 43. My former friend and best man became involved with cocaine. He was 33 at the time and desperately wanted to fit in with a younger crowd, even though he was married, had a child, a good job, and a hefty mortgage. He lost his job, his wife, his money, and his friends. The last time I saw him, he appeared to be homeless. His drug habit made him arrogant, and he knew exactly what he was doing, so I have no sympathy for him. Story 44. Watching someone you love not take care of their diabetes is torture. Story 45. A family friend was successful in motorsports when he was younger and eventually owned a vintage 1980s Ferrari. He had a mechanic who was an absolute master of his craft, which is important for finicky old Italian sports cars. The mechanic disassembled and rebuilt the engine and driveline components on his own and performed major services for decades. He was even offered a job on the spot by a premier Ferrari dealer and service center after bringing the vehicle in for inspection following the engine rebuild. The family friend helped him set up a shop with living accommodations on the upper level to get the business off the ground. The shop was successful for a while. Unfortunately, the mechanic struggled with substance use disorder for much of his life and eventually died from complications related to it. Story 46. It is really sad, but my cousin had a stillborn baby when she was young and turned to hard drugs to cope. Now she has 6 children she does not have custody of, has been imprisoned multiple times, has fines she cannot pay, and cannot get a job above minimum wage. I am the only one in the family who does not blame her for relapsing repeatedly. because I cannot imagine the horror of sobering up and realizing you threw your entire life away before 35 and had no chance of getting it back. The rest of the family does not understand that being an adult and working 2 full-time minimum wage jobs to barely make ends meet is not a life worth living sober, especially when all your children are in someone else's care and you see them in bad situations. I do not know which would hurt worse, to be honest. Knowing that most of them hate you, or knowing that some of them look up to you even though you have seriously messed up both your life and the lives of the children. Story 47. I caught one of my employees committing 3 felonies. He had been a server at my restaurant for 8 months. He served a group of women out celebrating a friend's birthday. Because they were a large group, an automatic 18% gratuity was added to their bills. Most of the women left an additional $1 or $2 on their credit cards because they were pleased with his service. This, however, was not enough for him. He entered an additional $5 to $10 per check into the computer, which did not match what they had written on their credit card receipts. One of the women was a financial advisor who spotted the discrepancy on her account and had the others check theirs. They were understandably upset, and I apologized profusely. I refunded all their money and gave them gift cards to come back at a later date. I pulled all of his past credit card receipts for the entire time he worked for me. He had started doing that 2 weeks after I hired him. He stole around $1,000 from 75 people over the course of 8 months. I turned over every receipt to detectives and fired him before his shift on Valentine's Day, which left us short-staffed on one of our busiest days of the year. When I confronted him with the owner, his face lost all color and he slumped to the floor, shaking. A month later, coronavirus disease 2019 hit and he fled to another state. I left the job a few months later and have no idea what happened to him. He threw his life away for $1,000. He was charged with credit card fraud, using a computer to commit a crime, and forgery. He manually altered 1 receipt. The man was handsome, charming, and had a large group of friends in the area, and then he was gone. I still have trust issues. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.